Welcome back. Today I'm here with another study from the cognitive approach, and this time we're doing Baron Cohen eyes test. So to start off, just take a look at these images. They are three different images. This is the first one. It's just a set of eyes, and there are four options: playful, comforting, irritated, and bored. So just spend some time looking at these eyes, the first picture, and try to identify what emotion you think is being displayed in the eyes. So for me, I personally believe that this is playful. Um, I don't know if anyone else also went for that option, but to me, I think this is playful. Let's look at the second one. The options we have are terrified, upset, arrogant, and annoyed. So which one do you guys think it is? I think this is upset. Some people could maybe pick annoyed or terrified, but for me, it's upset. And the last one, we have a set of female eyes, and the options are joking, flustered, desire, and convinced. And take a few seconds to just focus and try and identify what you think is being shown. For me, it's desire. So you can comment down and just let me know what you guys think. But this is essentially what the study is about. And if you wish to take this entire test, there are 36 such set of eyes. It's available online. You can just search up on Google for take the Baron Cohen eyes test online, and then I think there should be a link on testing your social intelligence. So just click that link and fill in the basic information, and then you can start off your test, and then let me know what score you guys get in the comments below. So what we just saw here were a set of eyes, and you had to try and identify the emotion that was being shown. Now, this study is on people with autism. So there's a good chance many of you might know someone with autism, or might have met someone with autism, or might have a family member. Autism is a disorder where the main symptom is that people with the disorder, they lack theory of mind. And theory of mind is a psychological concept that we'll look further into when we talk about the psychology being investigated. But in very simple terms, let's just say that they have low levels of empathy. Not sympathy, empathy. Empathy is essentially perceiving things from another person's perspective, perceiving things from another person's point of view. How good are you at understanding someone else's situation by looking at things from, or imagining what it would be like to be in someone else's shoes? So people with autism tend to struggle with that. And as a result of that, they tend to have very poor social and communication skills. We might find them to be socially awkward in public situations, and a lot of the behavior that they may display might seem odd to us. So before we get into that, let's look at the background of the study. So in 1997, Baron Cohen wanted to test this concept of theory of mind in adults with autism. And he decided to come up with a test called the eyes test. Now, if you go further back in 1985, Baron Cohen actually wanted to test theory of mind in children with autism. And he created this experiment or this task called the Sally Ann task, where children with Down syndrome is another disorder, and children with Down syndrome, they were compared to children with autism. And the task was basically there were two dolls, and we'll call one doll Sally, the other one Anne. And in this task, one of the dolls had a marble, the other one did not. One doll, so the experimenters were obviously controlling the dolls, and they did this little role play where they said that one doll has placed the marble in her basket and she's left the room. In her absence, the other doll takes the marble out of her basket and places it in her own box. So when the doll returns, where will she look for her marble? In her own basket or in the box of the other doll? So the children with autism actually struggle to give the right answer. They said that she would look for it in the other doll's box rather than in her own basket. And that suggests that they have low theory of mind, low empathy, because they were just giving the answer based on what they saw rather than trying to perceive things from the doll's perspective. But in 1997, Baron Cohen wanted to test this concept of theory of mind on adults with autism. So naturally, it wouldn't be the most ecologically valid experiment if we were to use dolls for adults, which is why he decided to come up with a different experiment in which he used a questionnaire, which we call the eyes test. So we call this the 1997 original eyes test. And it's basically very similar to what I just showed you in the first slide, where there are a set of eyes and the participant has to try and identify the correct emotion that is being shown in the set of eyes. And this was compared to a control group of people without autism, adults without autism. Now, the problem is that this original 1997 version of the eyes test had a lot of issues. It had too many problems, which didn't really make it a valid eyes test because everyone was getting a really high score. Even the people with autism, they were getting around 24 out of 25, which is a very high score and it's not a very valid measure of their theory of mind. Now let's take a look at some of the issues with the original eyes test. And these are very important to remember. It's one of CAIE's favorite questions to ask in the exam on Baron Cohen, where they'll give you or they'll ask you what are two issues with the original eyes test. And then in part B, they could ask you how they were overcome, or they could give you the issues and they can ask you how it was overcome. So try and remember all of them. And let's look at the issues first, and then we'll talk about how they were overcome later. So the first issue is that there were only 25 set of eyes with two options each. Now, this is a problem because imagine your teacher is teaching you a study, let's say the Baron Cohen study, and then they want to take your test and they want to see how well you know the study. But your test has 25 questions and they're all true or false questions. So you have two options. You read the question and the answers are either true or false. So it's close-ended. You either pick true or you pick false. Even if you don't know the answer to a question and you haven't studied, you can simply guess the answer. And there's a 50% chance that you will guess the right answer. So this is essentially making the test really easy because people can just, by chance, just guess the right answer, and there's 50% chance that they will end up picking the right answer. So two options for 25 set of eyes is not a very good test. So it's not a valid measure of their theory of mind. Another problem was that the two options, so the one true or false, the true or false example is what I was giving, but there were two words or two emotions, just like how I showed you. There was like playful, desire, etc. The ones we saw, the pictures we saw, there were four options, but in the original ISIS, there were only two such options. Another problem was that those two options, the two emotions that were given as the options, were often opposite words, such as sympathetic and unsympathetic. So again, making it really easy. You're not sure what the emotion is showing in the picture, but you're definitely sure it's not unsympathetic. So that only leaves one other option, which is sympathetic. So I guess that's the answer. So that's probably what people were thinking. Again, making it really easy. Then there were some eyes, some picture of eyes, which were displaying complex emotions, which were slightly difficult. But then there were some which were very basic and very easy to guess and identify. Furthermore, some of the images, some of the eyes were gazing in a certain direction, such as up or down, which made it very easy to guess the emotion. So these first 4 points you can see is indicating that it's not a very difficult test. It's actually a very easy test, and because of that, a lot of the participants were scoring really high, even the autistic participants. Like I said, many of them got 24 of 25. So this led to something that we call ceiling effects. Ceiling effects is, so you're sitting in your room like right now, just take a look up at the roof. You can see the ceiling, it's high up. Ceiling effects is when everyone gets the really high score, the highest score or a really high score in a task or in a test because it's very easy. The opposite of ceiling effects is floor effects, which is when a task is so difficult that everyone does poorly. So problem with this study, problem with this test, the original 1997 ICE test, is that everyone was getting a really high score because of the fact that it was very easy. Another issue is that there were more female eyes than male eyes. So from the 25, majority of the eyes that were shown in the pictures were of females. And that is a problem because maybe female eyes are more expressive, so easier to guess the emotion. And lastly, some of the words may not be understood. So the options that were there for each picture, the emotions that were given as options, what if the participant doesn't understand the meanings of any of those words? So in that case, they would have no option but to guess the answer. So these were the issues that were there with the original ICE test. Now let's discuss how Baron Cohen overcame these issues of the original ICE test. Also, random fact, Baron Cohen is the cousin of the famous TV director Sacha Baron Cohen. So just some random knowledge for you. So in 2001, 4 years later, after the original 1997 ICE test was created, Baron Cohen decided to create a revised version in which he overcame the issues of the original ICE test. And he did this with the help of a panel of 8 judges who helped with the development of this revised version. So they were basically, the new version that was created was tested on this panel of 8 judges. And there were 2 criteria that these judges had to meet in order for a set of eyes to be confirmed and be included in the new revised version. So what are those 2 factors or those 2 criteria that had to be met? So when this revised version is being tested on these judges, there are 8 of them, a panel of 8 judges. At least 5 of the 8 judges have to select the same correct target word. So let's say that a set of eyes is being shown. So for example, they've shown a pair of eyes and there are 4 options. I'm just making it up. Or let's just take the one that we saw in the first few slides that I showed you. So there was one, I think, that had the options playful, comforting, irritated, and bored. And I said that I think the right answer was playful. So let's say that the correct answer is playful. Now, the correct answer or the target word is what we want the judges to select. At least 5 of the 8 judges, when they're taking this test, they need to select the answer playful. Or if that is the correct answer, then they need to select the target word, the correct word, at least 5 of the 8. If 4 select, let's say playful is the correct answer, 4 select playful, 2 select comforting, 1 selects bored, and 1 selects irritated, we cannot include the set of eyes in the eyes test. So the criteria is at least a minimum of 5 judges have to select the correct target word. That's the first criteria. The second criteria is no more than 2 judges can pick the same foil. Now, foil is incorrect option. Okay, so there are 4 set of eyes. By now you've probably figured because you saw the first picture which I showed you, the eyes test. There were a set of eyes and the 4 options. So you probably figured one of the ways that they overcame the issues of 2 options is that they've increased it to 4. So one is the correct or target word, and there are three incorrect words which we refer to as foils. So 5 out of 8 judges have to select the correct target word, and no more than two can pick the same foil. Now let's say that one of the incorrect words of the foils is bored, and three of the judges pick bored. So 5 have selected playful, but the other 3 select bored. So even though the first criteria is met, that 5 have selected the target word, the second criteria has not been met because we need a maximum of 2 to select the same foil. But if 3 people pick bored, which is a foil, then we cannot include that set of eyes in the test because that suggests that there is too much confusion between playful and bored, which means that particular set of eyes could be either of the two emotions. And if the judges are struggling to identify, then the participants may also. Okay, because remember that this set of eyes is being tested on a panel of 8 judges first, just to validate it. And if it works on them, if they meet these two criteria, then we can pass the set of eyes and move it on to the final version of the eyes test to be tested on the actual participants. So if 5 pick playful, 1 picks comforting, 2 pick bored, and 1, I think that's 8, yeah. So let's say 5 pick playful, 1 picks comforting, 2 pick bored, then that particular set of eyes will still be included because at least 5 have picked the target word and no more than 2 have picked the same foil. Okay, so these are the 2 criteria that need to be met in order for a set of eyes to be included in the eyes test. Now let's discuss how the issues were overcome. So like I said, 25 set of eyes were in the original version. This was actually initially increased to 40, but then reduced to 36. So the final version has 36. The ones that the participants will take will be of 36 set of eyes. So maybe the reason there were 40 is because they initially had 40, but then perhaps there were 4 set of eyes where the criteria of the judges was not met. So they probably removed those 4. And hence we are left with a final of 36 set of eyes. Now, the study that we are doing for your syllabus is the revised version. So the participants, the results that we'll be looking at are the results of the revised 2001 eyes test with 36 set of eyes, not the 1997 set of eyes. You do not need to know the results of those. You do not need to know anything else of the 1997 original eyes test other than the issues that were there. So the main focus is the revised version. 4 options rather than 2, 1 correct with 3 incorrect or foils. Okay, now I said that the options were often opposite words. They are no longer opposite words. So all 4 words are words that have no link whatsoever, completely random words with no similar meanings, or they're no longer opposite words. The basic emotions, which were very easy, were removed, and only difficult, complex emotions were used in the study. The images that were gazing in a particular direction, which were very easy to guess, were deleted. As the 36 set of eyes, we had an even number of male and female eyes, 18 each. And finally, a glossary was also provided. So like a dictionary with the meanings of all the words. So all the options that were there for the set of eyes, they were all presented in a glossary, and the meanings were written in front of each word. And the participant, if they're stuck on a question because they don't understand the meaning of any of the words, they can just go open the glossary, they can check the meaning, and then they can go back and attempt that question. So by doing all of these revisions and overcoming the issues, it's clearly now a more difficult test. It's a more valid test. So if you do have a high or low score in the ICE test, it's not because of guessing the answer. It's probably because you are good at judging emotions or not. So it's a much more valid version. When I took the test, I actually had a pretty decent score, 30 out of 36. So that suggests that I'm relatively good at judging emotions. So like I said, you guys can take this test online and then let me know what score you guys get. Now let's talk about the psychology being investigated. So when talking about this term theory of mind, let's look at the actual definition. It's the cognitive ability to understand the needs and emotions of others. Cognitive means, in very simple terms, your mental abilities. For example, your language abilities, your memory, your concentration, your intelligence, and in this case, your empathy levels, your EQ, emotional intelligence, your ability to understand someone else's emotions, your ability to understand someone else's needs. So in this study, theory of mind is being tested through the questionnaire by seeing if you're able to um, determine someone's emotions just by looking at their eyes. So that's the concept being tested, and it's being tested on people with autism. Autism is a disorder where the individual lacks theory of mind and finds it difficult to understand the needs and emotions of others. And due to this, they lack social and communication skills, as I alluded to earlier. So the main aim of the study is the first one, which is we want to test the revised eyes test on a group of autistic adults. Um, there are two secondary aims. If a question comes on the aim of the study, you should write the first one, but the other two are also important. They're secondary aims. So along with having autistic participants, we will also have some control participants who are basically people without autism. And we will refer to them as normal or non-autistic participants. So one of the other aims is to test if non-autistic females will score higher on the ICE test than non-autistic males. So overall, we're comparing the autistic participants to the non-autistic participants to see who scores better in the ICE test. But within the control participants, within the non-autistic participants, we want to test if females will score better than males. And the reason for that is we believe that females are generally better at understanding emotions, judging emotions of others than males. So that's something we'll be looking at. And the third aim is to test for an inverse correlation between the eyes test and the AQ test. Now, there's another test that will also be taken by the participants with the eyes test. It's called an AQ test, the autism quotient test. And we look into this when we get into the procedure. But what this is basically saying is if you score high in the eyes test, you should score low in the AQ test, and vice versa. So we are expecting a negative correlation between these two tests. This is a lab experiment. It's being done in a controlled environment. The best definition of this study would be it's a quasi or a quasi experiment, which is quasi means half. It's a half experiment. You can even call it a natural experiment because a true experiment is one where we know that an experiment is one that has an IV and a DV. And a true experiment is one where the IV can be manipulated. But a natural experiment is one where the IV is naturally occurring. And the reason this is called a quasi-experiment is because the IV cannot be manipulated. The IV, the independent variable, is going to be whether you have autism or no. Now, that's not something that can be manipulated, which basically means I can't say, okay, today you're in the autistic group and tomorrow you're in the non-autistic group, right? You either have autism or you don't. It's not something that I can control. It's not something that I can decide or manipulate. It's something that's there naturally. So for that reason, because that is the IV, we'll call this a quasi-experiment, but you can also refer to it and treat it as a lab experiment. It's also a self-report study because a closed-ended questionnaire, well, there are two closed-ended questionnaires that will be used, the eyes test and the AQ test. Now, I told you that the IV is the autistic condition and the control conditions. So there will be a group with autistic participants. However, we refer to them as people with AS/HFA, Asperger's syndrome, and high functioning autism. Um, just for your ease, in very simple terms, just people who have autism or autistic tendencies and they're diagnosed with autism. So we'll call them the AS/HFA group. And there is one group with these particular type of participants. And then there are three control groups. And the three control groups have participants without autism, without AS/HFA. So they are the three normal groups or the three normal participants. And the reason we're splitting them into three groups rather than one big control group is because the three groups of non-autistic participants will differ in terms of their age as well as their IQ levels, intelligence levels. So that's why we have three different control groups. The DV is the theory of mind of the participants, and this will be measured through the scores in the two tests, the ICE test and the AQ test. Naturally, it's an independent measures design because it cannot be repeated. You can't be in the autistic group and the control group because it's a naturally occurring IV. You can't have autism today and then be non-autistic tomorrow and then have autism again the day after, right? So it's naturally going to be an independent measures design. It's also a matched pairs design, but specifically for group 1 and group 4. And they are matched in terms of their IQ levels. And we look into this when we discuss the sample. What are the tools being used? So I told you that the participants are going to be split in different groups based on their IQ levels. The IQ levels that were measured were done so before the study, before the main procedure. And the IQ test that was used is called the Wechsler Adult Intelligence Scale Revised IQ Test. You can just remember it as WAIS-R IQ test. Okay, they recently asked a question. What were the tests that were taken other than the ICE test by the participants? And the answer to that was the AQ test and the IQ test. Or you can even write the AQ test and the WAIS-R IQ test. It was a 2-mark question. This is a valid and proven IQ test, so I think it's available online, but you may have to pay for receiving your score. But this is one of few valid IQ tests that are there for you if you're ever interested in knowing what your intelligence level is. Other than that, they use the ICE test, which is a set of 36 set of eyes with 4 options. Participants, it's either right answer, wrong answer. You can get a maximum score of 36 out of 36 and a minimum of 0 out of 36. Okay, the other questionnaire, let's talk about the AQ test. Now, the other questionnaire that was used is the AQ test, the Autism Quotient Test. Now, if I ask you what an IQ test is, you will say it's something that is used to measure your intelligence. So the higher your score on the IQ test, the higher your intelligence. So if I ask you what the AQ test is measuring, your answer should be autistic tendencies. It's not measuring, you can say it's measuring your autism, but that would be incorrect. You could say it's measuring your autistic tendencies, autistic behavior, or autistic tendencies that you may display. So if you get a high score in the AQ test, you have higher autistic tendencies. And the higher your score, the more likely chance that you may have autism. So the AQ test is a questionnaire that has 50 statements. Okay, the ICE test has 36 statements, sorry, not 36 statements, 36 set of eyes with 1 right answer and 3 wrong answers. The AQ test has 50 statements. They're not necessarily questions, they're statements. And for each statement, you have a scale, a 4-point scale. It's a Likert scale, so it's in terms of statements. And the options you have are slightly agree, slightly disagree, and definitely disagree. So there is no right or wrong answer over here. It's just based on your own personality, on what is applicable to you as a person. So I'll give you a very simple example. One of the statements on the AQ test is, I find social situations easy. Slightly agree, definitely agree, slightly disagree, definitely disagree. And you just have to pick whatever option you think is applicable to you and your personality. Now, based on your responses, you either get a point or you don't get a point for a particular statement. So someone with autism, we've discussed, people with autism have poor social skills, poor communication skills. They may be socially awkward, so they may not find social situations easy. So for this particular statement, I find social situations easy. They'll probably select definitely disagree or slightly disagree. Now, if you select disagree for this statement, you will get a point. If you select agree, slightly or definitely agree, you will not get a point because then you're not indicating autistic behavior or autistic tendencies. So every time you give an answer to a statement in the AQ test that is indicating autistic tendencies, indicating autistic behaviors, you will get a score. So that's how you're scored on the AQ test. So the higher the score, the more indication of autistic behaviors. That is why a high score on the AQ test is an indication of your autistic tendencies. This is the examples of 3 examples of the eyes of the 36 set of eyes that were shown in the eyes test. Here's an example of what the AQ test could look like. I prefer to do things with others rather than on my own. People with autistic tendencies will perhaps pick slightly disagree or definitely disagree for this. I prefer to do things the same way over and over again. Someone with autism would probably pick agree for this. If I try to imagine something, I find it very easy to create a picture in my mind. Again, someone with autism might pick disagree for this. So you're probably seeing a pattern over here. Every time you pick an answer that is indicating autistic behavior, you will get a score. You will get a point for that particular statement. And like I said, the higher your score, the more likely chance that you have autism. So these are just examples of 13 statements. There are 50 like this. And there is no opt-out option. There's no neutral or middle point. So you either have to agree or disagree. And whether you click on slightly agree or definitely agree, or it's still the same point. So it's not like slightly is 0.5 and definitely is 1 full mark. As long as you're agreeing or disagreeing, you'll be marked accordingly. Let's move on to the sample now. 4 groups. Group 1, okay, you should know the names of the groups as well as the numbers, because in your exam, they can either take the name, they can say what are 2 features of the AS/HFA group, or they can even say what are 2 features or what are the results of group 1 or group 2 or group 3. They might not even mention name of the group. So you should know both the name and the number of the group. So group 1 is called the AS/HFA group. This has all male participants. There are 15 of them. They're adults and they have Asperger's syndrome or high functioning autism. So this is your autistic group. They have a mean age of 29 years and they were all recruited through a UK National Autistic Society magazine or a support group. So they volunteered and their IQ test was taken and they all had a certain IQ test and their average score, the average or the mean IQ of this group was 115, which is around average, maybe I think average intelligence, superior or above average intelligence, around about that level. So this is important because they're letting us know that it's not like these people have low intelligence. And the reason why the IQ scores are being taken over here is because Baron Cohen wants to prove that there is no link between theory of mind and intelligence. So a person with autism can be extremely intelligent, they can have very low intelligence, or they can have average intelligence. So your ability to judge emotions has nothing to do with your intelligence level. And that's something that Baron Cohen is also trying to show over here with the IQ levels. So these guys are, I would say, relatively smart. 115, that's average level intelligence. Group 2 is your adult control group. So these are your normal non-autistic participants. There are 122 adults. They are recruited from public libraries at 2 cities in the UK, Cambridge and Exeter, with an average age of 46 years. Opportunity sample. Group 3 are your students, student control group. 103 of them, 53 male, 50 females. They're all undergraduates from Cambridge University. So they are assumed to have high intelligence and they're around an average of 20 years. Also opportunity/volunteer sample. Now, earlier I said that group 1 and group 4 were a matched pairs design. Group 4 is called your IQ matched control group. These are 14 adults, males and females, who have an average age of 28 years and a mean IQ of 116. Their IQ level is exactly the same as the IQ level of the autistic participants, group 1. Group 1 had an average of 115, these guys have 116, which is the same level. So these 2 groups are matched in terms of their intelligence levels, their IQ levels. This is why group 1 and 4 are a matched pairs design. Matched pairs design is when you have two or more groups that are matched in terms of a certain variable or a certain factor. For example, in this case, intelligence. So the two groups are matched in terms of their IQ. They even matched in terms of age. I think the first one was 29 years, this is 28 on average, and even the number of participants. The first group had 15, this has 14. But the most important point here is that their IQ level is the same. And so the only difference over here really between them is that these guys are not autistic, whereas group one is comprising of participants with AS/HFA. Procedure. All the participants took the ICE test. And they took this test in a quiet room individually. Everyone took it one by one at Cambridge University or at Exeter University. So all four groups took the ICE test individually. Groups 1, 3, and 4 took the AQ test. Group 2 did not take the AQ test. I think it's probably because we already have so many non-autistic participants that I felt maybe Baron Cohen felt that it's okay if we just got results of the AQ test from two of the control groups. No need to do it in all three. But yes, all four groups did take the ICE test. Just remember, group 2 did not take the AQ test. So group 1 is taking both tests, group 3 and 4 are taking both tests. Group 1 also took a gender test, by the way, which means that when the ICE test was happening, group 1, the autistic participants, were also asked to try and identify the gender of the person whose eyes were displayed, just to see if they could identify whether it's set of male eyes or female eyes before they had to go on and judge the emotion. Okay, not a very important point, but it's mentioned so in the original article, which is why I'm mentioning it here as well. And like I said, each participant is taking the test individually in a quiet room at Exeter or Cambridge University. So that's pretty much it to the procedure. There's not really anything else. It's just a test that they're taking, two tests, the ICE test and the AQ test, individually in a quiet room. Controls are that everyone took the same tests on the same scale. They took the same IQ test. ICE test was rated out of 36, scored out of 36. AQ test was scored out of 50. Okay, now before we get into the results, there's one thing, if you understand this, you understand the study entirely. People with, sorry, people with high theory of mind, okay? People who have high theory of mind are the people who are good at judging emotions, right? So if you have high theory of mind, should you get a high score in the ICE test or a low score? You should get a high score. So high theory of mind suggests that you should do well in the ICE test, which means you're good at judging emotion. So you should be able to judge the emotion from the set of eyes. So you should get a high high score in the ICE test. But at the same time, what type of score should you get in the AQ test? High or low? The answer is low. So high theory of mind means you should get a high score in the ICE test, but a low score in the AQ test. Because if you have theory of mind, which means you're good at judging emotions, so then you should get a high score in the ICE test, but you probably don't have many autistic tendencies. Hence, you should get a low score in the AQ test because theory of mind is low in people with autism. So you should get a low score in the AQ test. However, if you have low theory of mind, and who are the people with low theory of mind? The autistic participants, the group 1. So if you have low theory of mind, you should get a low score in the ICE test and a high score in the AQ test. Okay, so just remember these points. So based on that logic, group 1 should actually get the lowest score in the ICE test because they have low theory of mind. And that's exactly what happened. Group 1, the AS/HFA group, they scored the lowest in the ICE test, as predicted, with an average score of 21 out of 36. Group 2, the adult control group, had an average of 26. Group 3, the student control group, had an average of 28. And Group 4 had the highest with an average of 30 out of 36. Now, this is interesting because Group 1 and Group 4, as we discussed earlier, have the same IQ level. And even though they have the same IQ level, Group 1 has the lowest score in the ICE test, whereas Group 4 has the highest score, 30 and 21. This clearly shows you that there is absolutely no link between your ability to judge emotions and your intelligence levels. So no link between theory of mind and IQ. Because if there was, if high intelligence meant high theory of mind, then technically Group 3 should have scored the highest because they were the ones with high intelligence. So clear evidence over here that there is no link between theory of mind and IQ. Now, one of the aims, the secondary aim, was to test if normal females would score higher in the ICE test than normal males. And that was seen over here. Normal females did score better than normal males in the ICE test. The mode overall was 24 out of 36, the most frequently occurring score. So most participants across all four groups scored 24 or 36. 24 or 36 was the most common score that was scored by the participants. Now for the AQ test. So we expected Group 1, the AS/HFA group, to score the lowest in the ICE test. So as a result, we're expecting them to score the highest in the AQ test. And that's exactly what happened. They had an average of 34.4 out of 50. Group 2, like I said, did not take the AQ test. Groups 3 and 4 had almost the same score, an average of 18.3 out of 50 and 18.9 out of 50. And so if females are better at judging emotions than males, then they should score higher in the ICE test. But at the same time, males should score higher in the AQ test than compared to females. And that's something that we saw here as well. Normal males scored higher in the AQ test than normal females. So what we are seeing is everyone who's scoring high in the ICE test is scoring poorly in the AQ test. Well, I wouldn't say poorly, but scoring low in the AQ test. And everyone who's scoring high in the AQ test is scoring poorly in the ICE test. So clearly we are seeing an inverse correlation, a negative correlation, where if you score high in one, you're scoring low in the other. So there was a negative correlation between the ICE test and the AQ test, and it was minus 0.53. The minus sign is indicating that it's a negative correlation. 0.53 can be considered an average strength correlation. It's almost like saying that there is a 53% chance that if you score high in the ICE test, you will score low in the AQ test, and vice versa. So there is no guarantee that just because you score high in one, you'll score low in the other. There's a 53% chance that this will be the case. And that's actually true because when I took both tests, I actually scored high in both. I scored 30 out of 36 in the ICE test, and then I think I got around the same 30 out of 50 in the AQ test. So there's no guarantee that you will always get a negative correlation, but in this particular study, we did see that this was the case overall. So conclusions are that the revised test did replicate the findings of the original ICE test, which is basically that the autistic participants did not do as well as the normal participants. The revised test did work on the autistic in testing the theory of mind of comparing it to autistic and non-autistic participants. Normal females are better at judging emotions than males. Males are more likely to develop autistic tendencies than females. I think I read a stat somewhere that 1 in every 50 males can develop autism, whereas 1 in every 200 females have autism. I'm not entirely sure if that's correct. If someone could just verify that, check on the internet and let me know. But it is definitely more prevalent in males than females. And lastly, the two tests, the IQ test, sorry, not the IQ test, the AQ test and the ICE test are inversely or negatively correlated. Now, the study does not provide any conclusive evidence about its supporting nature or nurture, but there might be some biological factors, some hormonal factors, maybe genetic factors that may cause people to develop autism. But at the same time, there could also be some environmental factors. Maybe your upbringing is such where your social or communication skills did not develop to the fullest, which is why you may develop some autistic tendencies. Um, and these can also perhaps be worked on over time if you have autism, which can, if someone can, if a therapist can help improve your social communication skills, perhaps some of your artistic tendencies may decrease, which can help your condition. So, slight evidence of nurture as well. But again, no real evidence is being shown in the study that it supports either of the two. In terms of the individual situational debate, it's purely individual because um, different participants had different scores based on their theory of mind. If you have autism, if you have ASHFA, you're likely to score poorly because you have low theory of mind. Whereas those who have higher theory of mind are going to score higher. So theory of mind is an individual trait. Everyone has different empathy. Everyone has different ability to judge emotions differently. So that's definitely an individual trait, which is why it's favoring the individual explanation. Application is that these two tests, the ICE test and the AQ test, can be used as a diagnostic tool to try and identify autistic tendencies in people at an early stage so that we may try and treat them early on so that their condition doesn't worsen. Um, so it's something that can be used by researchers, by therapists as a diagnostic tool. Evaluation. So naturally, being a lab experiment, its reliability is a strength. High levels of controls. Give any two examples. Everyone took the same test, rated on the same scale. Makes the procedure standardized, easy to replicate for reliability. Validity is a strength because the original issues were overcome. A panel of 8 judges were also used to help develop the ICE test. Give any examples of the issues that were overcome, such as a glossary being provided. So reducing the possibility of participants guessing the answer. So it's more valid in terms of accurately assessing their theory of mind. However, one way validity could be low is it was a self-report. So wherever self-reports are involved, there's always a chance that people may give socially desirable responses or they may lie, particularly in the AQ test. You may come across some statements and you may not want to show that you are someone who is antisocial or introverted, or you may want to depict a different personality compared as opposed to what you really are, who you really are. So you may answer differently and inaccurately, which can lower the validity of your responses. Um, Furthermore, it's a questionnaire with static images, still images of eyes. And in real life, we don't judge emotions by looking at pictures of eyes. We interact with people, we talk to people, we look at their body language, their expressions. And through that, we are able to judge emotions a lot better. So perhaps this isn't the most valid way of assessing your theory of mind. Generalizability can be both a strength and weakness. It is a relatively large sample, 254 participants in total, males, females, people of different ages, different areas of the UK, different IQ levels. But generalizability is only restricted to people of the UK, not outside, not other cultures where results could be perhaps slightly different. And another very important point is the sample size of the autistic participants is not very large. It's only 15. And they're all male and they're all adults. So children or females with autism are not being represented in the sample. So the findings cannot be generalized to a larger population of people with AS/HFA or even to children or females with the disorder. Ecological validity is a weakness. As I mentioned earlier, mundane realism is low because in everyday life, we do not judge emotions through pictures. We judge it rather through actual interaction with people. Ethics can be considered a strength. Most of the ethical guidelines were maintained. There's consent, people volunteered, they gave consent. There's no evidence that they were deceived about the purpose of the study. They were completely debriefed, they were aware of the purpose of the study. Confidentiality is maintained because their identities were kept confidential. However, you can argue that there may be some potential psychological harm or emotional harm, particularly for group 1, the ASHFA group, because the ICE test, because of their low theory of mind, may have been difficult or stressful for them. So, because of that, potential psychological harm may have been caused to them. It's an independent measure design because you are either in the control group or the autistic group. So order effects cannot be there as you're only taking the test just once. You're not taking it more than once. So no chances of practice or fatigue effects. And there's match pairs design being used for group 1 and group 4. So ensuring that IQ is not a participant or confounding variable. Um, Data is quantitative because there is a self-report being used, which is close-ended with a rating scale. Um, the two tests are being scored out of 36 and 50, so it's giving us quantitative, objective, numerical data, which can be used to compare results of different groups. For example, we compared the results in the ICE test of group 1 and the control groups. And through that, we were able to determine that the participants with autism have lower theory of mind. Weakness is that there was no qualitative data, completely close-ended, no qualitative data whatsoever. So we're just getting objective data. We're not really understanding the reasons behind their ratings or the reasons behind these behaviors or results. And lastly, it's a self-report because it's a close-ended questionnaire. So if a question in the evaluation comes in which you have to talk about self-report, you can just mention that it's a closed-ended questionnaire which is standardized, can be replicated for reliability, and it's providing objective quantitative data. We've already talked about that. But weakness, again, points we've talked about, validity could be low because participants may give untruthful responses. And because it's purely closed-ended, there is a lack of qualitative data. So we are done with this. We've got one more study left in the cognitive approach, which is Andrade. Um, I have created a WhatsApp group recently in which I've added a few of you, in which I'll be sharing updates, PDF files, and more information about any online classes or sessions that I may be keeping perhaps closer to the exam. So anyone who's interested in these updates or notes or PDFs that I'll be sending, you can go to the very first page of this presentation and you can check out the email ID or the WhatsApp number that I provided and just email me or message me if you wish to join the group and I can send you the link. And of course, if you want access to these notes or anything else, any specific requests that you may have, you're free to contact me on my email ID or on my WhatsApp number. Okay, see you guys next time.